Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have a very special guest who does a lot around leadership. Tom, he's reached out to me and asked to be on the show. So here we go. As I like anybody who's going to ask to be on the show, I'm going to let them be on the show because you never know what we're going to learn. And this looks like it's going to be a great episode. So make sure you have a pen and paper, or at least just ready to take some mental notes. But as usual, Tom, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I feel like people can introduce themselves better than somebody that doesn't know them. So, Tom, why don't you take it away and tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are?
Sure. So, leading up to actually starting the recording button, Chris and I had a little chat, and he said, "You know what, Tom, what is your title? How should I introduce you?" So I said, "Look, I don't have a title," and that I learned that lesson a while back. I had a title. I was a CEO, and we went into this mergers and acquisition meeting in Latin America, and everybody passed their cards around, vice president of this and vice president of that. And there was this guy, Mike, and he didn't even send out a card and didn't have a title. But after about 15, 20 minutes into that discussion, it became very apparent that Mike is the guy. If anything's going to happen at this table, it's going to go through Mike. So that kind of gave me a lesson to say, titles, especially in cards, are not important. It's not the office that makes the person; it's the person makes the office. So when people buy into you, and you're sitting in a room, and pretty quickly people will figure out, who's the guy, and Mike was the guy, and no title. So ever since then, I don't have a title on my card. I'm just Tom.
I love that. That makes so much sense, doesn't it? It makes so much sense. Oh, that's awesome. So Tom, tell us a little bit. Obviously, this is a show about burnout, and as we were talking just before we started recording, I feel like leadership is one of those key elements to preventing and overcoming being burned out, because you have to be, in my mind, you have to be the leader of yourself. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead anybody else. And in turn, you need to be the best version of yourself to be able to show up to somebody else as well. So I know that you have wrote a few books that have like key, the key principles. The one that popped into me when I was looking at your website, which we'll put in the comments and in the description down below, was the 4 keys to leadership success. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'll tell you about that in a second, but let me, kind of reflect on your comment, which I think is 100% true, about leadership. And the first thing I'd be able to do is lead yourself. And by the way, that is not easy to do. Leading yourself requires for you to figure out a number of things before you can lead yourself. So we'll talk about that in the 4 keys. But and then the other thing that's really important that you mentioned is look, if you can't lead your family, if you can't lead your kids, then probably you're not going to be able to lead at work. You probably won't be able to lead an organization, because those are the people that, buy into you, your kids and your wife. And, they don't have to, like a guy in the office and you sign his paycheck, they have to do what you tell them to do, right? Because that's their paycheck. But, you don't sign your wife's paycheck. You don't sign your kids' paychecks. You have, they have to buy into you. It's one of the things that I say in a book. It's a funny little story. Is my kids were young, right? So I have 3 daughters, and I'm the softie, and my wife is the disciplined person. But every once in a while, and my kids did something that really, unrattled me. So, my punishment was, all right, stand against the wall with your nose and your toes touching. Time out for 3 minutes. And my oldest daughter, she did, sometimes she did something. I don't know what it was, but one time she did something and she did it. And then my middle daughter had a timeout, and she did the same thing, nose and, toes against it. And then my youngest one, she just basically rebelled. She says, no freaking way, I'm not doing this. This is stupid, right? So, I said, no, you got to do it. I kind of try to, physically put my hand behind her back, and she's like physically fighting back. She's like, I'm not standing on the wall. This is absolutely nuts, And then my other 2 daughters like, shit, how stupid were we? I mean, we did what Dad told us. Yep. And that's how kind of life is. If you're in an office setting, if you're a work setting, and one person doesn't buy into you, and one person kind of rebels, and then the other people in the office stand around, they're like, well, shit, that person got away with it. So I guess I don't have to do it either because they got away with it. Why shouldn't I get away with it? So, life is, in fact, I would say my kids taught me more about leadership than, any corporate organization or any corporate boardroom who could have taught me. And then regarding your other question about burnout, I mean, um, I would say, I was an expat. Yeah, let me start with a little introduction then before I get to that story. From 1980 to 2006, I was in global corporations, not just corporate America, but global corporations. And I started off with, just an entry level job in a Fortune 100, and then kind of rose up through the ladders and got my first international assignment in 1991. And then I was out internationally from 91 to 2006 when we moved back to the US. And always I would call, during my expat years, I would say it's the military equivalent of business. When you're an expat, you're an expert in something, and they send you all over the world to fix a problem. So large Fortune 100s usually have subsidiaries all over the world. And then one of the local companies may be having a problem, so they send you to fix it. And that's what I did from 91 to 2006 as a general manager, then a vice president, and then a CEO eventually of a $375 million organization. So that was kind of my journey. And then in 2006, when I moved back to the US, then I started my own business. And 10 years later, I sold that business, and I have two other businesses. So now I'm kind of playing with my own dime instead of with somebody else's dime. But back, speaking of burnout, because I think that's the topic of the show. It's easy to get burnt out. When I was CEO, I put I think 270,000 miles on British Air and another 200,000 on Lufthansa in 1 year.
Whoa!
Right. So and it's a little distorted because you're flying business class, so you get extra points, but still, it's a lot of miles. Yeah, and my typical week was, Monday morning, I wake up, I go to the airport, and I fly to one country and then fly to another country. So during a regular week, I would visit basically 3 countries, maybe 4, and then 1 month, because the headquarters were in Israel, and in Israel, their Sunday is your Monday. So once a month, I had to go in for a board meeting. So that means to get there for their Monday, which was our Sunday, I would have to fly Saturday to get in there for, Sunday morning. So I would lose 1 weekend a month. So, Monday to Friday, I'm gone. Plus, I lose 1 weekend a month. So talk about freaking burnout. And I remember this so clearly. I don't know where the discussion came up, but my daughter was about, I think, 15 or 16 at the time. And she turned to me, she says, "Dad, I haven't seen you half my life." Right?
It's deep. That hits deep.
Yeah, exactly. So, when you hear something, I still get choked up with that. But,
Yeah.
When you hear something like that, it kind of makes you look at your priorities and say, what the heck am I doing?
Yeah.
What the heck am I doing?
It takes a big man, and as we're going to talk about leadership in that, but it takes a big man to be able to actually go, hey, whoa, wait a second, this is true, and actually look at yourself as well, and it takes somebody to be honest with themselves to be able to go, oh, wait a second, my daughter's saying she hasn't seen me half her life, and actually look at it and go, what am I doing? Not go, I know so many people that I've talked to in the past. My mom ran her own business, chiropractic business, and that, and they get on the thing of, I just have to keep going because this is for their future. Yep, you don't see me now, but you'll see me in the future. And to actually sit there and look at it and go, hey, wait a second, and then do something about it is very incredible.
Yeah, Harry Chapin, Cats in a Cradle. Did you ever hear that song?
I haven't heard that one, no.
Yeah, so Harry Chapin, Cats in a Cradle. It's a song from, like, I think the 60s, so it's a long time ago, and it's a song about how father, is always working, and the kids coming to the father, hey, can we play some ball? He said that always say, I'm a little too busy, I can't make it. And then, the kid grows up and, comes home and say, hey, Dad, can I just borrow the car keys? And the dad now wants to spend time with the son, but the son now doesn't have time, right? So, yeah, man, I get choked up about these things. So
it's truth though. It's truth though.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, okay. So you came home. Your daughter goes, Haven't seen you half my life. What happened next?
So then, you take some inventory of yourself and you say, okay, how are you going to change your life differently, right? And one of the things that I talk about in the book is, if anybody tells you there's time management, they're full of crap. There's no thing, and I'm sorry about using the French words here, but
That's okay.
they're, you got all these time management courses. Time management doesn't exist. You and I have the same 24 hours in a day. So the question is, what do you do within those 24 hours? So I call it priority management. And if you set up 4 quadrants and you name them urgent and important, important, not urgent, urgent but not important, and then finally not important and not urgent, right? So we can't help but spend the majority of our time into things that are important and urgent. Right? You can't help that. If it's important and urgent, you got to get to it. You can't put it off till tomorrow. But where we make the mistake is a lot of us spend a lot of time, which is urgent but not important, right? So if you say, look, 100, let's say just say you got 100% time, 24 hours in a day, what you end up doing is probably about 60% of the time you're going to spend on important, urgent things. You'll probably spend another 25, 30% on stuff that's urgent but not important. It's like, okay, I got to mow the lawn, or I got to take out the garbage, or I got to do this, right? And then the things that are not urgent but important is, hey, I got to go see my kid play a baseball game, right? Or I got to take my wife out to dinner. Or, for me, for example, writing the book. I mean, writing the book wasn't urgent. It was important. I could have put it off till forever, right? So then one day I just said, okay, well, I'm going to carve out time and I'm going to write this book. So if, successful people, what they do is they actually take activities which are urgent but not important, and they kind of cut those out.
They palm them off and they give them to somebody else to do.
Exactly. And they reallocate all those priorities, reallocate to stuff that's important but not urgent. And by the way, if it's not urgent, not important, you shouldn't be doing it anyway, right?
Yeah.
Then it's, then why are you doing it? So, I kind of took inventory of that, and we made a decision shortly after that to move back to the US. And unfortunately, my middle daughter didn't benefit that much from it because she was, already almost finishing high school and then off to college. But my youngest daughter did benefit because I spent a lot more time with her than with the other kids. So I wanted to make sure I don't make that same mistake with the youngest one. So the oldest ones didn't benefit, but the youngest one did.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you've had conversations with the oldest ones about all this as well. It sounds like you're the kind of guy who would. So if we move into what you've learned from that, and then obviously you've written the book, then you're on your website, it talks a lot about the leadership principles. Tell us a little bit about the leadership principles.
Well, there's 4 principles. And one is what I would call knowing who you are. What is your character? And that's equivalent for if you have a company, that's equivalent to your culture. So everybody talks about, company culture. Well, company culture is really an individual's character, right? And what is your character? And again, to put it in a frame of reference of burnout. Look, there's a lot of people who are burnt out that doing stuff they're not good at or doing stuff that they hate. They're just doing it because they got to make that, I got to make the mortgage payment every month, or I got to make the car payment every month, or, my kids are off to college and I got to pay the college tuition. So there's a lot of financial pressures on people. And because of those financial pressures, they do stuff they hate, and they're working 10, 12 hours a day at it. Right. So I always say to people, look, answer yourself 3 questions. The first question is, who are you? The second question is, what are you passionate about? And third question is, what are you good at? And wherever that statement intersects, that's what you should be doing, right? Because look, I love playing tennis. It's a great hobby of mine. I could never make a living on playing tennis. So I'm not that good at it. I love it, but I'm not passionate about it. I
Yeah.
watch it, I try to play it, but I'm not that good at it. So know what you're good at, right? And then
Yeah.
if you're passionate about it, you're good at it. Another story I use is my uncle. It's a little gory story, so I don't know if
Go for it. Go for it.
your audience would, but in Eastern Europe, pig slaughters are pretty common, right?
Yeah.
It's you're out in the country, pigs are part of the agriculture out there, and they're easy animals to raise and feed, and in the wintertime, there's always, quote unquote, a pig slaughter because they don't, in the country, there's not a lot of refrigeration. So they do it in the months of January, February. So I had I was born in Hungary, original Hungarian, and then I grew up in the US. So when I got my assignment from one of the Fortune 100s to start up the Hungarian subsidiary, everybody, my whole family was like, oh my God, Tom's coming home, the prodigal son. So, we got invited to pig slaughter, to my father's sister's farm, and her husband, my uncle. I remember as a kid, because I used to go down, before I moved to the US, I would go down for summer vacations and spend on the farm. And the guy, I never understood a word he said because he would just mumble. And like every third or fourth word that would come out of his mouth would be a curse word. So like you heard mumble, 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 curse, mumble,
Yeah.
mumble, mumble, curse. So I was like, man, and then as I got a little bit older, then I had to go down to the farm, and then you had to do the shots of the local moonshine with a mumble, mumble, curse. And so like here I am as a, young executive moving back to Hungary. So, the historical fact is I don't have a lot of respect for this guy, right?
Yeah.
Because here I am, now I'm a general manager. I'm running a $12 million company, and I'm going to the farm because I don't want to blow off my family or my uncle and my cousins, so I'm gonna go visit them. So we go down to the farm and we get there like at 7:30. So by 7:30, this guy's already taken out one pig and is ready to start for another one, right? 7:30 in the morning. So they wheel out this. It was basically close to 300 kilos, which is almost like 600 pounds. So
Yeah.
this is a huge freaking pig. So they wheel out this guy, and to make a long story short, and without being gory, single-handedly, this guy totally dissects this animal within about 2.5 to 3 hours, and whatever's left over can fit in a small paper bag.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So why am I telling the story? The reason I tell the story is because this guy, his strength, right? His passion, and what he knew was he knew how to freaking slaughter animals. I mean, he knew this inside out. He could, if I tried to do that, I would have no clue what to do. But single-handedly, this guy takes apart a 600-pound animal, dissects it, and then not only that, but my cousins at a certain point, without even him having to say anything, they go into action, and they start taking the meats there in the buckets, they start chopping it, they start spicing it, making the salami and the pepperoni and the sausage and the bacon and salting the ham, and it's like a freaking assembly line. So talk about leadership, right? I mean, my uncle's clearly a leader of his family. All my cousins know exactly what to do when it comes to, packaging or, animal slaughter, right? Yeah. So all of a sudden, my uncle rose like, 100 degrees in my eyes. He went from a bumbling idiot to a craftsman and a really skilled person who can dissect an animal in about 2.5, 3 hours, and because it was his passion and he was great at it.
Yeah.
Right. So the point is, look, if you want to be somebody who doesn't want to burn out, if you want to be a leader, then do the stuff that you're passionate about and do the stuff that you're good at, because you want to get up every morning and do it and do it great.
I've got a question for you, because I know, I take myself, for example, when I was burned out, I was a police officer. Those that listen to the show all the time know I was a police officer for 7 years, thought it was what I wanted to do, but ultimately burned out because of the trauma and everything that I saw. Now there's parts of it that I absolutely loved, but I couldn't see through the haze as such. What do you say to people? And then I've got other people that I know, that are dairy farmers or that are working corporate different things, and they complain about what they do, but they don't see any way to get out, or they feel like they are good at it, but they don't enjoy it. What do you say to them, or how can you help them to to see the light of being able to actually be able to shift and change so that they don't keep getting burned out or stay burned out?
I mean, I can't put it any simpler than this. Is look, you got to do some self-reflection and pivot, make a change. Without being really cruel, like grow a pair, right? You just gotta, because if you don't make that decision to change your life, I can tell you 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you're still going to hate your life and you're still going to be working hard, right? At some point, and you did it yourself, right? I mean, you did it yourself. You said, okay, I've got burnout. I'm going to quit the police force and I'm going to do something out with my life. That's not an easy decision. You walked away from a career, right?
It definitely wasn't as easy as it sounds right there. I almost cheated on my wife, which then ended up sparking me going, whoa, something's wrong. And then, but something happened and it sparked me looking at it. I guess my biggest thing is kind of what words do you have for somebody, from the leadership side of things for leading themselves as such, or even if there's somebody that sees somebody else as like that, like for example, if we take, your uncle and your cousins, if one of your cousins did that just because they've done it since they were a kid and it's what they know, but really they don't have passion for it, what would you tell them, or how would you help them to go, hey, you could actually go do something different? You don't have to be on the assembly line of slaughter of the pig slaughters. And I know in there comes the culture of family and all of that dynamic. So as a leader, how would you go through that? Because I know there's so many people, parents, family members that kind of want the best for their family, but these kind of dynamics come in.
Well, I think the first question is, what are you passionate about? If you're not passionate about that, figure out what you are passionate about, because if you're going to leave that environment, if you're going to leave that job, if you're going to leave that household, then what are you going to pivot to? So first figure out, what is your passion? And then, are you good at that? So can you follow that? So, and then the other thing that's in the book I talk about is having a vision statement for yourself, for your life. I mean, I wish when I was 20 years old, somebody came up to me and said, Tom, what is the vision statement for your life? It probably would have startled me and said, what the heck is a vision statement and why should I have one for my life? Right. So the light didn't go on until later in my life, but I have a vision statement for my life. It's really simple. I think all vision statements need to be really simple, and they need to be really simple for two reasons. One is you need to understand it. And two, other people need to understand it so they can buy into you and they can help you. Right? So mine is man of God, leader men. Right. So how did that come about? Well, since I was a kid, I always found myself in leadership roles. And to this day, or anytime over the last 65 years, when I was in a room and there was a leadership vacuum, and sometimes you're in a situation where there's no leaderships, my natural tendency was to step in and lead. So leadership is part of my DNA. I don't know why. I mean, God made it that way, but anytime or if I'm in a situation where I see a bad leader, I have a tendency to take over, right? Because I recognize bad leadership. So, and that man of God came in about 1994, where, for the first time after 15 or 16 years, I got canned from a job, and it affected me so radically that, I went to the one thing that I had a strong foundation on, which was faith. And then I got basically baptized as an adult in 91. And then I said, okay, well, now going forward, not only is it leadership roles, but also it has to honor God. So why is that important? Anytime I come to a crossroads where I have to make a decision, I put it against a test, right? Whether it's a job offer, whether it's, whatever, I say, okay, is it a leadership role and is it going to honor God? And if it fails one of those two tests, I don't do it.
Yeah. I think this is very important. I talk about this a lot, and it's one of the questions that we normally go through, and you've already hit it nail on the head, so I don't even need to ask it later on, but is what's your why? Why do you do what you do? Which is a vision statement. And I believe, if I had been told this when I joined the police, I'd probably still be a police officer to this day, because I would have had something that I was bigger than me that I was fighting for. Mine is I want to create less pain in mine and others' lives. Beautiful. Mine again stems back to my childhood. I was in pain. My dad went off to chiropractic school, and so I ended up crying myself to sleep every weekend when my dad would leave to go to San Francisco to go to chiropractic school, and then he'd come home on Saturday or Friday night, and he'd be there then Sunday, and it'd repeat. And I love my dad. He lives just about half hour away from me. I see him all the time normally. But then you take later on in life, I got bullied, got pain. My brother got bullied. I wanted to create less pain, carried on. I saw a train crash in LA happen in 2008. And in my mind, I was thinking about becoming a cop. And I saw the cops down there being there for people when they're in their deepest amount of pain. And I went, I want to be there. How do I get down there? And that was the start of my journey. The problem is I lost that because I didn't know that statement, as you said. And and I wasn't testing that statement all the time. At the beginning of my policing career, that's all I was doing. I'd stay at domestics longer. I'd help the couple kind of work through things. And then you lead it into now. I've done life coaching. That's creating less pain. Now financial advising. It's all creating less pain for people. And it is. And you got to test it. And I think that's a huge thing as well for preventing burnout, because if you're testing it and you have that mission statement always there at the tip of your tongue and always focusing on how is applying it to what you're doing, I feel you're always going to be enjoying what you're doing or moving forward, at least within it.
And the other thing that helps you do is you don't get caught up to have what you do define you.
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of people get caught up on what you do. What do you do? I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
What identity. Do you do? So, and then the other thing, when I previously talked about, okay, be passionate about something, be good at something. And then the third question is, who are you? So if I use myself as an example, who am I? I'm a servant leader. What am I passionate about? I'm passionate about adding value to people, make other people's lives better. And then third is, what am I good at? I'm good at leading and mentoring. Yes. So the beauty of that is, as a servant leader, I can be a servant leader at work. I could be a servant leader on my tennis team. I could be a servant leader to family. I can be adding value to my customers. I could be adding value to my employees. I could be mentoring my kids. I could be mentoring my employees. So you're not locked in to, I'm an engineer, or I'm an accountant, or I'm a baseball player. You can take that formula and you can use it at work. You can use it at play. You can use it in a family. And again, that imbalance with your vision statement, I think, will help you prevent burnout, because it helps you focus on things that matter to you and matter to others. Rather than just spinning your wheel to pay your monthly bills.
Yeah. I definitely, it's so interesting, you saying that, me thinking about the things that I do, that I talk about, that we've talked about a lot on this show with you, and then also others, is it's very true. You got to know who you are, have passion for what you do, but having that vision statement, for me personally, I feel is one of the biggest things, as long as you keep it at the tip of your tongue, focused on it, and applying it to what you're doing in the ways that you said, asking those questions, because then the noise doesn't get to you as much. I remember being in the police, and the police is a really bad place for it. It's always somebody else's fault. This guy didn't get enough for what he got. The bosses don't care about us. I need this, I need that. And your identity, like you said, you get tied up in it. And whereas when you have this, like you're talking about, is you don't get tied up in that identity. You get tied up into what you're doing and how you're doing it, and why you're doing it. And so, it's incredible to hear. I love it.
And not to be controversial, but I'll be a little controversial, because
I love it.
I was on a different podcast the other day, and the guy it was about the time of the Olympics, and he brought up, hey Tom, what do you think about? Because he had a very specific comment on the transgender weightlifter that was a male competing as a woman, right?
Yeah.
So, I kind of thought about it. I said, okay, well, I don't want to go down a rabbit's hole, but what I said, which I think is I still believe 100%, is, look, if your identity is wrapped up in your gender, if your identity is wrapped up in your skin color, if your identity is wrapped up whether you're gay or not, then you're shortchanging yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Because your identity should be much bigger than that. You know, if you're going through your life, you say, I'm a gay man, and that's your identity, you're shortchanging yourself. You're a lot more than that. Right.
Yeah.
If you go throughout life as I'm a Black woman, again, you're shortchanging yourself. Yeah, that's part of your identity, but that's not all you are.
Yeah.
So, the same thing is just, if you think about yourself much bigger than your job, if you think yourself much bigger than whether you're a male or female or transgender or gay or not gay or, what color, skin color you have, if you think about what you have to offer to the world and what you have to offer to others and to yourself, you can make that definition much, much, much broader than just what you look like.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there, and I've had conversations with people, especially with a lot of the stuff that has been going on in the U.S. around ethnicities and things like that in the U.S. The Black Lives Matters type stuff and that, and there's a whole nother conversation, and that kind of it's very polarizing, but it's very true. I've had the same conversation. We need to identify as a bigger thing. Identify as I create less pain in people's lives. I don't care who you are, what color you are, what sex you are, what anything. As long as if you're showing up and I'm sitting there being able to do it with you, I'll do it all day long, because I create less pain. That's what I do. I don't care who you are. I just create less pain. And so it creates more broadness and it creates more openness. I think you've got something definitely there, Tom, on that. So obviously, we've gone over a few things of the leadership of the leadership principles. Have we missed anything out that you want to really, reiterate or say to viewers?
Well, again, if focusing on your audience, which is, preventing burnout, I think one of the most important things they're going to have to, prevent burnout is surrounding yourself with a good inner circle, right? John Maxwell said one is too small of a number to achieve greatness.
Yeah.
And it's a great statement. We have a tendency to be heroes and try to solve all our problems ourselves. I remember, my daughter, who was, about 17 at the time, I had a little sit down with her and, went through a little, for lack of a better word, a little coaching session. And, I said, look, you can't do everything yourself, right? You got to ask for help. Why are you trying to, ask me for help, ask your sister for help, why are you trying to have this burden on yourself to solve all your problems? And then, probably about a week later, there was an Instagram post from her that kind of, alluded to the same thing. I was like, all right, I got through. Right. But as adults, right, I just, person starts up a company. I start up a company. I'm a hero. I'm working, 14, 16, 18 hours a day. But a smart guy that would start up a company would have a nice inner circle who's there, who believes in him or her. And supports him on her, and not maybe as a cheerleader, maybe as a resource, maybe as a confidant, but the person not on their own trying to do it. The person has help, and the best kind of team is a diverse team. So, and if we still have time, I'll talk a little bit about what I define as a diverse team. But the best way to prevent burnout is not to do it yourself.
You're totally right on that. I feel you've hit the nail on the head. And for listeners, I told you a little bit about my before we started recording about my journey to become not burned out as such, or as I call it, my finding myself again journey when I came back to the US and did a motorcycle trip camping around on like literally a penny's dime. And I came back and having a mission of why I was doing it. I wasn't just coming back just for a holiday for willy-nilly. It was I want to get better. And I used every single person that I met to help me get better. I bought a 2004 V-Star 1100 Yamaha like cruiser. It looks like a Harley Davidson on a budget. My mom luckily financed it. I hunted around, found it, bought it for $3,500. did a little bit of work on it. Took my dry bag duffel bag that I had from my sailing days, put all my crap in it, tent, everything, and strapped it to the back of the bike. Put one of those old school 90s like igloo coolers that kind of layer on top, which you can't find anymore. Strap that to the back so I could put a 6-pack of beer in it if I needed to, or put any cold food or anything in there. Strap that to the back. It was red and white, so it looked like I was delivering organs, and I used to get comments about it all the time. But I literally drove around and I met the first night I didn't meet anybody, but I managed to get the bike stuck off road going this old place that I used to go when I was a kid. So I went back to my childhood, went to places that made me happy, where we used to paraglide when I was a kid. I remember my dad sliding me into the dirt to try and save the paraglider from the pine trees at this place. So I went up and saw this, took the back roads, really shouldn't have, but got stuck, got unstuck. But then the second night, the second day, met a guy at a gas station on another motorcycle that was moving from Seattle to Denver, and he was riding. And I was going to go stay. I was in between two places of which place I was going to camp that night. And he's like, "Oh, I'm going here." I was like, "Okay, sweet. You mind if I join you?" And again, using him to do it. And then we started talking about that. At that campsite was a thermal pool, and that ended up meeting people, telling them all about why I was there. The fact that I was an ex-cop going through PTSD, just getting it off my chest. And then carried on, met a couple of older guys from Boise, Idaho on bikes, rode with them for about a week through different areas, saw some really cool stuff. Again, talking to them about that. Turns out one of the guys' wives is an ex-cop as well who went through stuff, and then I ended up in Moab talking with guys there. I met 2 ex-cops from Colorado, ended up staying with them, but again, like you said, using other people to help you through that journey, or help you become the best CEO or start your business. Bouncing ideas off of people is one of the best ways to I get goosebumps when I talk about this. Helps you to get it off of your chest and also get other ideas, because otherwise you spin on these ideas. It's like this podcast, the whole reason for it, even though, if somebody's listened to every single episode, they'll hear a common thread through a lot of stuff. But you hear it in different ways. Like I'm like, oh, that's very common, but heard in a different way. And that actually concretes me in more. So I just wanted to reiterate on that, because I think there's a big thing of not trying to do stuff on your own, because we all try to, as humans, I can be better than you. In these day and age, I have to be better than you. I have to be right. You have to be wrong. We're not right and wrong. We are just have the knowledge that we have, and we need to always be open to more. But yeah, that was a long.
And the other lesson is ride a motorcycle, because you meet the nicest folks on motorcycles.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's funny though. You bring that up. You ride a motorcycle with a bag strapped to the back of it that does not belong there. It's just bungee corded onto the back seat. And you pull up to gas stations, and people in cars go, "Oh, what are you up to?" And I would use that to go, hey, they'd be like, "Oh, what are you up to?" "Oh, I'm trying to refine myself, going through a bit of PTSD from being a cop." Well, literally, I would just tell them my story, whether they asked or not. Again, this comes back to what we were talking about before about looking after you. And I'm like, I would tell them it, because I would have some people that would go, "Oh, whoa, well, thanks for your service, and have a great time." But then you'd have people that would sit down and have a conversation with you over a coffee or a drink for like an hour and a half.
Yeah. Well, look, people connect through stories. People don't connect. That's how we connect with each other. And you should have taken the same motorcycle ride in Ireland. Yeah. I went to Ireland. My wife is half Irish, so she's been bugging me for a long time. She wanted to go back to Ireland and see. So probably about 3 years ago, we went to Ireland, and we spent I think about 14 days there. We landed in Dublin, and then rented a car and kind of drove all around Ireland, around all the coast. So we got to see Dingle and Galway, and went up to Belfast, and it was just a wonderful trip. And I kind of summarize it to say, look, I've never seen so much green and so many sheep in my life. The countryside of Ireland is amazing. Guinness never tasted so good anywhere in the world as in Ireland. I mean, it literally. In Ireland, Guinness tastes different. I don't know why, but it's delicious. And a third is in Ireland, and this is the most important thing, Ireland, everyone speaks to you. You can't walk down the street without striking up a conversation with somebody. And like you said, it's, in your journey with your motorcycle, it's about substance stuff. It's not like, how's the weather?
No.
right? It's you engage people with your stories. We're, for example, we're in I think it was maybe Dingle, but maybe it wasn't Dingle, maybe it was another one. We're in a pub, and my wife, her heritage is Sean Cassidy, and Sean Cassidy was one of the Irish revolutions. He was one of the I guess hitmen or something, and then he got gunned down and taken out by the British Army himself. But she was sharing this story with the guy, and then the guy says, "Hang on a second." So he gets up from the bar and he goes up to the band, and then like within 2 or 3 songs later, they're singing a revolutionary song about Cassidy, right? So, but that's how people connect. People connect through their stories. Whether they're good stories, whether they're bad stories, but that's how we relate to each other, and that's how we really start forming bonds and relationships. So yeah, I love what you shared, and I think a lot of that people, it resonates with a lot of people. So don't be afraid to share your stories.
No, and I want to get into, before we finish up, you were going to talk about something, I can't remember what it was. What was it? It'll come to me. But on that sharing, this is one thing that I say to people all the time. We're, as humans, we're really good at, when somebody asks you how your day is, we're good at filler questions. And somebody will ask you how your day is, and you go, "Yep, it's good. How's your day?" And it's very, I'm seeing it more and more because I'm saying it more and more to people. But it is actually still quite rare that when somebody asks you how you're doing, somebody actually tells you. I've heard my wife on work meetings the last few days. People will be like, "Hey, how's it going?" at the very beginning of the meeting, like when they're just kind of opening up and just having general chit chat before anybody else comes on. And she's actually telling them how she's doing when it comes to us being locked down at the moment. And it's so awesome to hear, because then they have a conversation about it. Like you said, the stories start happening, and it starts to become an actual decent conversation. And it's the same thing I feel like we need to do. Instead of filler questions, if you ask somebody how they're doing, actually want them to tell you how they're doing, not just, "Yep, I'm good," like we have a tendency to do. You were going to talk about we were talking about inner circle, and then you were going to talk about I'm trying to remember what it was. Can you remember?
I don't know. I'm sure I talk about a lot of stuff.
So I guess the last
yeah. So the diversity, I was talking
diversity.
about, if we have time to talk about diversity of the team.
That's the one. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that, because I think that is a very important thing, because that can be applied to, I live off of a pyramid that is, yourself. It goes self, look after yourself. Then it goes look after your family, close friends that you classify as family. Doesn't necessarily have to be blood. And then the very top is work and everybody else. And I think that if you surround yourself around those family as such, that you classify as family, I think that comes into that diversity side of things, making sure that you have that diverse group so that you are constantly growing and learning, and as well as then you go into business. You can't have a business where everybody thinks the same way, because then it doesn't go anywhere. But yeah, take it away, Tom.
No, you're 100% right. And, many times you hear the word diversity is kind of charged with diversity of skin color, right? I mean, or this diversity of gender. Yeah. And I define diversity as diversity of thought.
Yeah.
Because and you just you just spoke about that 2 seconds ago, which is extremely important. Is we have a tendency to surround ourselves with people who think like us, right? I'm for example, I'm more a doer. I when things have to be done, I kind of dive in and I do them. I'm a doer, but not everybody's a doer. So if I surround myself with all doers, then we'll be an excellent team of doers that can implement everything in record time, but it may be the wrong thing, right? Because, we didn't surround ourselves and have people on our team who are, maybe more analytical. They look at the world a little bit differently. But, I had a client who was a bank, and I was, they brought me in to help them with strategic growth, and they were in analysis paralysis. So my conclusions for the CEO was, look, as long as you got this team, you're not going to grow, because they don't want to get anything off the ground. They're scared to do everything. They analyze everything to death. And nothing's going to happen here until you change up your team where you have some doers and some other personalities in your team to actually implement stuff. Because the way you surrounded yourself, it's all, you guys all think alike, you're all risk averse, and you're never going to grow because nobody wants to take a risk and do stuff. So diversity of thought is extremely important. So if you surround yourself with the same thinking individuals, you're all going to think alike and you're all going to have the same blind spots. So surround yourself with diversity of thought. Now, so naturally, look, if you were brought up in Brazil, and if you were brought up in Israel, or if you were brought up in South Africa, or if you were brought up in Germany, or if you were brought up in Chicago, you will look at the world a little bit differently. So you will have a little diverse of thought because your thought patterns came from your environment and part of your DNA. Right? So that's where it came from. So there is some truth to having diversity of thought from different geographies of the world. But the key again is diversity of thought rather than diversity of gender or skin color or stuff like that. And then if you do that, I think you can have a pretty successful inner circle. People can be honest with you, make sure that, whoever's in your inner circle, they're not yes people, but, they give you honest feedback to say, hey, and family is great for that. I mean, talk about honest feedback. My wife is gives me a lot of honest feedback, right?
Yep.
And sometimes you go, I mean, literally, I turned to her, I said, look, Kat, that's really fair. But if you said that 20 years ago, that would be extremely fair. I don't know why you're saying that now, because I don't think I'm like that. 20 years ago, maybe, but not now. But look, they're going to be really honest. Your kids are going to be really honest with you. They're going to be honest feedback. So be prepared to receive honest feedback and prepare to accept it. As long as you put that team together where that team does not have hidden agendas for themselves, but everybody's on the same side. They're there to support each other and they're there to support you. If you have, if they have some feedback for you, listen.
Yeah. No, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head there. It's definitely, yeah, you heard it from Tom. So it's very true. We don't sometimes like hearing it, but if we actually are honest with ourselves and look at it, we can actually, and if you don't understand it, ask them why they feel that, why they see that in you. If they're saying it about you or about something that you don't agree with, ask questions about it so you can understand it. If you don't understand it, you need to ask questions around it, not from a thing of saying that person's wrong, but a thing of so you can understand it as well. Because a lot of times I feel like, even I have it, my wife will say something and be like, seriously, you think what, why, like, what did I do? But it is, and it's made us get closer in a relationship, but also you have that same thing with work. I'm going through some things with work and that, with my business and different things. And, I asked a question, I stood my ground and asked the question, and I actually got a response back that made me understand it. I went, gotcha. Okay, cool. That's why I need to do it. I remember first starting out in the financial industry, financial services stuff that I'm doing now. And I was like, I'm struggling to get these things across the line. Had one of my supervisors listen to some of the calls, and he goes, oh, Chris, what about this and that? I was like, oh yeah, maybe. Had another supervisor listen to it, said the same thing, just in a different way. And so, it's listening to those different things as well, and asking questions and wanting to constantly grow. Absolutely. As you said. Last question I have for you. Besides, first off, how do people get in touch with you if they want to either get your book or they want to, learn more about you?
Well, book is pretty easy. Again, it's called C-Suite and Beyond. It's up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, many other online retailers. And I'm blessed and cursed with the last name. I see that it's up on the screen there. So it's a curse because it's very difficult to pronounce, but it's very unique. So if you Google Kereszti, it's like me and my sister is what you find. She's an OBGYN in Boston, so you can't confuse me with her. And so I have a website. You can get a hold of me by just filling out a contact form there. I think my email's up there also. I have a pretty much of a open door policy. Just drop me an email. Let me know what your thoughts are.
Cool.
And I'm happy to answer them. And if you want to pick up a book. I think you'll learn something.
Yeah.
I always say, look, it's much easier to learn from somebody else's mistakes than to make those yourself. And even though I try to learn from other people's, and I made the same mistake because I thought I was smarter, but it's the book is a collection of mistakes and wins. So learn through my mistakes and learn through my wins.
Yeah, no, I love it. And we'll put all the links and stuff in the description and how to get in touch with you. You sent us some good ones here, and we'll put those links in there. Last question I have for you, Tom, before we go and we wrap up. What would be your top tip to self-happiness?
To self-happiness?
Self-happiness.
It's, what I started with, those 3 questions. Who are you? What are you passionate about? And what are you good at? And if you stick to those 3, and that kind of defines, what makes you tick. And I think then you'll be happy. Yeah.
No, I love it. I love it. So live by those. Who are you? What are you passionate about? And what are you good at? So this has been a great episode of Fight the Burnout. I want to thank Tom for coming along and being on the show. It's been great to have conversation about it, learn new things. I know I learned some stuff. So if you're listening to this in your car, note down some stuff, pull over first, and note down things that you learned from this episode, even if it's just one. I talk about this in every episode at the end. Just take one thing away from this. Don't beat yourself up trying to take 6, 7, 8 dozen things from it. Just take one thing to start with, and then come back and listen to it again if that one thing works really, really well for you, or if you feel like there's other things you could learn from this episode. And also share it around. Think of one person that could learn one thing from this episode. That's where it all starts, just taking one step at a time. And if you need anything, if you want assistance, if you need any details, if you have questions, just reach out to us at fighttheburnouttpodcast@gmail.com. We'll be happy to assist in any way that we can. But till next time, thank you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the fun things that everybody asks you to do on things. But most importantly, just share it around. We want to give this knowledge out to people. And as you know, my why: create less pain in lives. So, and help people learn. Until next time, we love you all, and thanks for listening.